Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone, my name is Nur Hikmah from Class B English Literature 2019. In this video, I'm going to review some material from my course, English Literary History. The first material is Anglo-Saxon literature, or known as Old English literature. Anglo and Saxon were the ancestors of the English race. After the fall of the Western Roman Empire in the early 5th century, three Germanic tribes, the Angles, Saxons, and Jutes, saw an opportunity to fill in the power gap and start migrating to Britain. The Anglo-Saxons were fearless, adventurous, and brave people. By 670 AD, they had occupied the major part of the country, and the land of Angelus or Anglo-land, present-day England, became their permanent abode. The language brought by these Anglo-Saxon settlers, together with some Latin and Celtic words, became Old English. Anglo-Saxon literature was the earliest phase of English literature. This period consists of literature written in Old English in Anglo-Saxon England from the 5th century AD to the Norman conquest of 1066. The Old English spoken by Anglo-Saxon people looks incomprehensible to today's English speaker. However, there are a good number of words that have survived in modern-day English, such as day, year, kiss, love, arm, and etc. The Anglo-Saxons were fond of singing about battles, gods, and their ancestral heroes. It is, however, the song of religion, wars, and agriculture that marked the beginning of English poetry in ancient England. The Anglo-Saxon poetry was mostly sung instead of written. That's why there are very few remnants left of it. Among them, the most famous one is Beowulf. It is the first English epic poem. Beowulf narrates a tale of the adventures of Beowulf, a brave hero. This poem, in fact, abounds in all sorts of references and allusions to great events and the fortune of the king and nations. After embracing Christianity, the Anglo-Saxon poets began to write religious poetry. Therefore, the major portion of Anglo-Saxon poetry encompasses religion. The most famous religious poets of the Anglo-Saxon period were Cædmon and Cynewulf. Cædmon is famous for his hymn, in which praises in honor of God. Cynewulf's famous religious poems were Juliana, the fates of the Obelisk, Christ, and Ellen. Among them, Christ is the most popular one, telling the event that occurred in the life of Jesus Christ. The Anglo-Saxons replaced Latin prose with English, which observed all the rules of ordinary speech in its content. The famous Anglo-Saxon king, Alfred the Great, translated most of the famous Latin chronicles in English. However, the second famous prose writer of the Anglo-Saxon period was no doubt Alfred. He was actually a priest. Among his famous writings were the Lives of the Saints, Homilies, and Grammar. Moreover, compared to other contemporary prose writers of the period, Alfred's prose was easy and authoritative. The Anglo-Saxon period flourished until the Norman conquest of 1066. After the defeat of Harold, the last of Saxon kings, by William, who was the conqueror of Normandy, French, the Anglo-Saxon period finally came to the end. In history, the ruling period extends roughly from 450 AD to 1066 AD. There is no doubt that the Anglo-Saxons lived a life rich in courage, splendor, savagery, and sentiment. Their literature, thus, remarkably contains all these traits. It reflects all the main principles of their life. For instance, the love of personal freedom, religion, appreciations for womanhood, responsiveness to nature, and the struggle for glory. The second material is medieval era. The Middle Age or medieval times in Europe was a long period of history from 500 AD to 1500 AD. That's 1,000 years. It covers the time from the fall of the Roman Empire to the rise of the Ottoman Empire. This was a time of castle of peasants, guilds and monasteries, cathedrals and crusades. The Middle Age was defined by a feudal system in much of Europe. This system consists of kings, lords, knights, vassals, and peasants. The people who were part of the church play an important part too. When a person was born into a certain group, they rarely moved to another level. Middle Age, a period in European history from the collapse of Roman civilization in the 5th century to the period of the Renaissance, variously interpreted at the beginning in the 13th, 14th, or 15th century, depending on the region of Europe and other factors. The Middle Age are called this because it is the time between the fall of Imperial Rome and the beginning of the early modern Europe. The Dark Age are given this name because Europe was in disarray and comparison to the golden rise of classical antiquity, and life was short and poor. Life was harsh, with a limited diet and little comfort. Roman were subordinate to men, in both the peasant and noble classes, and were expected to ensure the smooth running of the household. Children had a 50% survival rate beyond age 1 and began to contribute to family life around age 12. The term Dark Age was coined by an Italian scholar named Francesco Petrese. The term thus invoked as a designation for the supposed lack of culture and advancement in Europe during the medieval period. The term generally has a negative connotation. The coining of the Dark Age, he bestowed this label upon the period in which he lived, as he was dismayed at the lack of good literature at that time. The time is often referred to with terms like the Middle Age or Feudal period, another term that is now consensus amongst medievalists. The period of European history extending from about 500 to 1400 to 1500 century is traditionally known as the Middle Age. The term was first used by 15th century scholars to decide the period between their own time and the fall of the Western Roman Empire. The cause of the Dark Age was the rejection of reason, barbarians destroying stored knowledge, and the Church outlawing the reason as the means to knowledge, to be replaced by revelation, which they have the monopoly on. Migration period, also called Dark Age or Early Middle Age, the early medieval period of Western European history, especially the time 476 to 800th century, when there were no Roman or Holy Roman Emperor in the West, or more generally, the period between about 500 and 1000. For 1,000 years, a period that began with what some historians called the Dark Age in the Christian West, and that endured through both the Eastern and Western extension of the Roman Empire. The essence of Christian faith was worded differently than it had been in the first 3 centuries. There were many reasons for the downfall of the Middle Age, but the most crucial one were the decline of the feudal system and the declination of the Church's power over the nation-state. It was made up of the serf and peasant that left of the feudal system in search of making money in trade. The Dark Age ended because the Charlemagne united much of Europe and brought about a new period in time of emerging nation-states and monarchies. Christianity in the Middle Age dominated the lives of both peasant and nobility. Religious institutions, including the church and the monasteries, became wealthy and influential given the fact that the state allocated a significant budget for religious activity. People believed that all the good things in life were due to the bounty of God, and that the evil events of the time were due to their sins. Medieval religion was extremely important, and even the doctors and physicians of the era were also well versed in religion. No religion did not cause the Dark Age. As much as I had to say it, religion was a stabilizing influence after the fall of Roman rule. It allowed disparate people of various beliefs to unite under a common belief and help bring Europe together. The third material is Renaissance and Reformation era. The period of the Renaissance of Reformation, which spanned roughly from the 14th through 17th century, is rich in history and culture. The term Reformation and Renaissance do not refer to the same historical period, although the two are related. The Renaissance began in Italy in the 14th century. The name literally refers to a period of cultural and intellectual rebirth, and is characterized by the increased interest in Greek classical values and art. It was during this time that many European empires, like Spain, became interested in exploring other continents. Example, Christopher Columbus' voyage to America. The Reformation refers to a split between the Roman Catholic Church and the Protestant Church. The movement began in Germany in the 16th century, when Martin Luther famously nailed to the wall of cathedral a list of complaints against the clergy. Included in latter list were denunciations against the clerical corruption and disagreement with Roman Catholic constraint and ritual. Lutheran religious oppositions led to the Lutheran Protestant religion. The Renaissance in some way caused the Reformation. For instance, during the Renaissance many Europeans became interested in reading and learning, which is due to the fact that all kinds of books, including the Bible, began to print it and calculate in a vernacular, or everyday spoken language, that everyone could understand. It was because of this that religious leaders and thinkers developed different understanding of Christianity and, like Martin Luther, began to question Roman Catholic doctrine and practice. The fourth material is Revolution and Restoration era. The period from 1660 to 1700 is named as the Restoration period. In 1660, King Charles II was brought to the throne. The people of England were suffering from tension due to the strict rules of Cromwell. Thus, the nation welcomed the restoration of Charles II. The restoration brought about a revolutionary change in social life and literature. The following characteristics distinguish these periods are: 1. The Restoration. During this period, gravity, spiritual zeal, moral earnestness, and decorum were thrown to winds. The king was throughout debauched. He had a number of mistresses. He was surrounded by corrupt courtiers. Corruption was rampant in all walks of life. Number 2 is religious and political quarrel. In the Restoration period, we see the rise of two political parties. There were the Whigs and the Tories. The Whigs were opposing the Tories were supporting the king. The rise of this party gave a fresh impulse to men of literary ability. Both the parties supported them. The religious controversy was also going on. It was very bitter. The Protestants and the Catholics were face to face. The nation was predominantly Protestant. The Catholics were being punished. Dryden's Absalom and Archipelago reflects this religion and political conflicts of the day. Number 3 is Revolution. Charles' brother James II ascended the throne in 1685. He tried to establish Catholicism in the country. He became unpopular very soon. The entire nation rose against him. He lost his seat to the Broadness Revolution of 1688. The Restoration, the controversy, and the Revolution of 1688 deeply influenced the literature of the age. Number 4 is Rise of Neoclassicism. During the Restoration period, a new literary movement started. It is known as Neoclassical movement. Thus reflected the mood of the century. Reason occupied an important place. The writer of this period agreed upon the rules and principles. Rules and literary conventions become more important than the seriousness of subject matter. The writer expressed superficial manners and customs of the aristocratic and urban society. They did not pry into mysteries of human mind and heart. The new epoch is the antithesis of the previous Elizabethan age. It is called classical. Number 5 is imitation of the ancients. The author of this period turned to a great classical writer, thus grew the neoclassical school of poetry. The neoclassicists imitate the rule and ignore the importance of subject matter. They could not delve deep into human emotions. This thing can be noticed in the age trident and bold. Number 6 is imitation of the French. The influence of French counted for much. Charles II and his companions demanded that poetry and drama should follow the French style. Now began to the so-called period of French influence. Pascal, Racine, Beloud, and other French writers were immediately blending. The French influence is seen in the Restoration comedy of Manner of Dryden, Wycliffe and Congreve. This French influence is also responsible for the growth of opera. The last one is realism and formalism. The writer of the Restoration age reacted against the romanticism of Elizabethan age. They developed realism to a marked degree. The early Restoration's writer represent the realistic picture of a corrupt court and society. They emphasize vice rather than virtues. They gave us courts, low place without moral significance. They saw only the external of man, his body and appetites. They did not see his soul and his ideals. The writer of the age followed formalism of style. They aim of achieving directness and simplicity of expression. The last material is the Neoclassical Era. It is nestled between Renaissance and Romantic period of literature. Through this period, lasts only for around 150 years, its influence can be seen in the literature of today. The neoclassical period of literature is also known as a Enlightenment period. Literature can be broadly divided into ages, starting from the Middle Age, Renaissance, Neoclassical period, Romantic period, Modern period, to the Postmodern period. Neoclassical authors saw the world under a new light. Unlike the previous two eras, the writer of this era gave more importance to social needs as compared to individual needs. They believe that man can find meaning in society, religion, natural order, government, and literature. In no time, the winds of the new revolution swept through Europe and North America and changed everything from art to literature to society and fashion on its way. Through the neoclassical era later transitioned into the romantic era, it left behind a prominent footprint which can be seen in the literary work of the day. The term neo means new while, classical refers to the Roman and Greek classic, hence the name is aptly coined as neoclassical. Neoclassical literature emulates the Greek and the Roman style of writing. The neoclassical era was closely preceded by the Renaissance period. Before the Renaissance period, life and literature was mainly dictated by the church. However, during Renaissance, science and innovation was given the main emphasis. Thus, in the neoclassical era, a past difference between the two ideologies can be witnessed. Therefore, you will find confusion and contemporary depictions of neoclassical literature. Characteristic: neoclassical literature was defined by common sense, order, accuracy, and structure. In the literature of the Renaissance period, man was portrayed to be good. However, these genres of writer show man to be flawed and relatively more human. Their characters also practice conservatism, self-control, and restraint. A large number of literary work came out during this period, which include parody, fables, melodrama, rhyming with couplets, satires, letters, diaries, novels, and essays. More emphasis was given to grammar and etymology, study of work. Stages: for the sake of convenience, experts have divided this era into 3 sections: Restoration period, Augustan era, and Age of Johnson. That's it from me. Thank you so much for watching. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.